So recently I've been hearing a lot of information on the internet about the last man, and this was a concept brought up by the great German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche in his monograph Thus Spoke Zarathustra. So if you troll through the internet, you'll hear a lot about the last man, but no accurate or definition or statement is really given about what the last man actually is. So this video will just discuss what the character traits of the last man is. So just give you more of a kind of, not a definition, but just a more of a realization, or just a more general idea of what the last man actually is. It's just important to note that Nietzsche never defines what the last man is. He just kind of vaguely describes him in a number of tiny scenarios, in which I'm going to go through now. So the last man is primarily characterized as a type of individual that is fat, lazy, and falls asleep watching TV after overindulging in junk food. This clearly denotes the type of man that is content with living a life whose primary and only purpose is to exist in a perpetual state of comfort, security, and pleasure. This is a value system that does not idealize or extol higher virtues or values, challenging circumstances, or hard work. Zarathustra, after descending the mountains, is trying to deliver a sermon to a crowd of people that are hanging around the marketplace. Individuals that normally hang around the marketplace are typically known as commoners, especially in Nietzsche's time, and their primary concern is grotesque entertainment, gossip, manners, and commerce. So after delivering his sermon about the Overman, or Übermensch, Nietzsche receives an apathetic and mocking response, which to somebody like Zarathustra, who's been spending time in his sojourn in the mountains reflecting about life and human nature, is very disconcerting to him. So we obviously must imagine how jarring this was for Zarathustra. So rather comically, I think you can imagine Nietzsche's Zarathustra as a typical hobo you hear in a town centre raving about God or some other incoherent babble, whilst others are walking past laughing, scared, or neutral. Except this raving mystic is much more coherent than usual, and he's delivering some badass Nietzschean theory, so he is much different than the normal hobo, although that would be good to listen to, obviously. So Nietzsche says, "There they stand, here they laugh. They do not understand me. I am not the mouth for these ears. They have something of which they are proud. What do they call it? That which makes them proud? Culture, they call it. It distinguishes them from the goat herds. They dislike, therefore, to hear of contempt of themselves. So I will appeal to their pride. I will speak to them of the most contemptible thing. That, however, is the last man." Contempt here is being used in its typical notion, the feeling that something is worthless and should not be considered. Here, as suggested by the text and the quotation that I just read, Nietzsche will appeal to their pride by talking to them about what he believes is the most contemptible thing, which is the last man, and the last man is the embodiment of their culture. So Nietzsche is clearly telling us that the last man is worthless and also valueless. So according to Nietzsche, what is the last man? I tell you, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. I tell you, you have still chaos in yourself. Alas, there comes a time when man will no longer give birth to any star. Alas, there comes a time when the most despicable man, who can no longer despise himself. Lo, I show you the last man. The last man cannot despise himself. That is, he cannot feel or understand that his actions, values, or decisions may under some or all circumstances be lacking in value. This is important. To not have the orientation that your actions may be lacking, be worthless or unsubstantial, entails that you do not have any serious self-reflective capacity to evaluate your actions. The last man, we can reasonably assume, acts in a manner that is contemptible and embarrassing for a culture to promote. So the fact that the last man does not have the consciousness nor the insight to evaluate his actions as lacking value or real meaningful substance means that he is unable to change them in a positive manner and be something other than the last man. Only the last man can be the type of man that lacks insight to such a degree that he finds it not only acceptable but also content, but also agreeable to be the last man. So Nietzsche continues his rendering of the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is the star? So asks the last man, and he blinks. The earth has become small, and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. His species is ineradicable as the flea. The last man lives longest. The last man, according to Nietzsche's rendering of him, is a type of individual that does not care or even remotely try to answer the questions of his existence, those that profoundly affect and determine his life. The last man, by Nietzsche's characterization, is neither a romantic, a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet. And due to the unquestioning nature of this type of man, the world has been made small and manageable. According to this type of man, the striving, the ambition, the determination to battle against the hardships, and the desire to become more than we are is a deterrent to happiness. We trust that Nietzsche believes this because remember when he says again, the earth has become small and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. His species is ineradicable as the flea, the last man lives longest. Yet, despite all of this, the last man, due to his security, comfort and pleasure, believes, as Nietzsche says, we have discovered happiness, says the last man, and they blink. Nietzsche goes on to discuss the herd-like collective behaviour and the smug mentality of this group that dogmatically and unquestionably believes the men of the present to be better than the men of the past. If this is true, then the values and behaviours that instantiate the last man are, according to him, to be preferred over all other values. Once again, the last man is unwilling to question his values against any other lifestyle or generational values, due to their inability to evaluate themselves and the values that they inhabit that should guide their lives or other people's behaviour. Nietzsche continues, no shepherd and one herd. Everyone wants the same. Everyone is the same. He who feels differently goes voluntarily into the madhouse. Formerly, all the world was insane, says the most subtle of them, and they blink. Despite Zarathustra's attempt to shame the market crowd with a contemptible notion of their culture through the concept of the last man, the crowd continue to mock him by clamouring to become the last men themselves. As we can see, they have truly misunderstood Nietzsche's message, and the market crowd is the collective manifestation of the last man.